San Jose, California, March 22nd, 2005. A woman named Anna Ayala walks into a Wendy's, orders a hot bowl of their famous chili, and sits down like it's any other Tuesday night. Picture this. You're starving. You finally sit down, steam rising off a bowl of chili. First spoonful in, crunch. Not tortilla chip crunch. Not, oh, they went heavy on the onions crunch. The kind of crunch that makes your brain quietly whisper, we're not supposed to be chewing that. She freezes. The room keeps moving, chairs scrape, orders get called, somebody laughs at something completely unrelated, and she's just stuck there, eyes flicking between the spoon and the bowl like one of them is going to apologize. I can almost feel her tongue doing that panicked inventory. What did I just break? A filling? A tooth? Please let it be a burnt bean, as her fingers go into her mouth and pull out. A shape that doesn't belong in food. Smooth, cool, wrong. And then the brain finally labels it. A fingertip. Everything inside the restaurant snaps to a different timeline. Her chair skids, the spoon clatters. She makes a sound you don't rehearse, it just tears out. And suddenly there's a person standing in the middle of a Wendy's, holding up something that used to be attached to someone, shouting, "Don't eat the chili!" If that were me, I would have gently set my soul down on the floor and left my body to deal with the paperwork. Word spreads faster than steam. Employees vault from behind the counter. Somebody's already on the phone, and by the time the health officer arrives, the whole place feels like a crime scene dressed up as a fast food joint. Lights too bright, mop bucket in the corner like it's seen things, customers hovering with that "I want to leave," but also I want to know energy. The fingertip is wrapped in damp gauze like a deeply unconvincing prop. Only it's not a prop. It has fingerprint whorls, a nail, reality. The health officer does the calm professional thing, confirms it's human, gets it to the medical examiner, talks to the woman who found it, Anna, and gives her the kind of reassurance that sounds like reassurance but isn't. Really. The chili's cooked hot enough that, in theory, bacteria and viruses wouldn't survive. In theory. Also, please get baseline tests. For peace of mind. I don't know about you, but if I'd just taken a bite of surprise human party, the only baseline I'd be interested in is new identity, new city, goodbye chili forever. Meanwhile, the clock on that chili starts working against the restaurant. That pot was cooked mid-afternoon. This happened in the early evening. 5 hours. How many bowls went out? How many people might be at home right now, blissfully unaware that they were one spoon away from the worst plot twist dinner can offer? A hotline gets set up. Reports trickle in. The news vanishes. Any chance this stays local. Wendy's corporate scrambles into damage control mode. Spokespeople talk about safety protocols and integrity and cooperation, all the phrases that live in glass cases marked break in case of public panic. It doesn't matter. For weeks, the company bleeds money, about $1 million a day in lost sales, because you can't just tell people, please stop thinking about fingers when you order chili. Anna, the woman at the center of it all, doesn't hide. She goes on television. She tells it the same way each time. The bite, the crunch, the scream, the finger. I can feel the country enter that collective, uncomfortable squirm. Half pity, half morbid curiosity. We love a freak accident we can survive vicariously, and we hate the idea that it could happen to us. That combination is rocket fuel. Then the medical examiner's report lands, and it changes the temperature of the room. The fingertip is in 2 pieces, a 1-inch pad with prints intact, and a second segment with nail. There are signs of heat, but not the kind you'd expect from hours of simmering. The skin shows some damage. The tissue underneath does not. And here's the part that makes everyone lean forward. If the piece had spent those hours in chili at the company's standard temperature, the tissue would be further gone. Not to be gross, but slow cookers are democracy. Everything falls apart eventually. This hadn't. Now the questions turn a little and click into place like a safe dial. If it wasn't cooked in that pot for long, then maybe it wasn't in that pot for long. Maybe it didn't fall in during prep. Maybe it arrived later. Maybe it was never supposed to be in there at all. And here's where my brain does the thing where it tries to be reasonable and unhelpful at the same time. Option A, kitchen accident. Someone sliced off a piece. Panic. Chaos. It got lost in the pot. Horrifying, but at least it slots into the terrible workplace injuries folder. Option B, somebody put it there on purpose, which lives in the folder labeled, what? Before we answer that, I need to show you why obvious corporate villainy isn't always the right bet. There's this whole shadow genre of stories where people swear they found a creature in a can or a bottle, and companies swear their process makes that impossible, and the truth gets stuck somewhere between disgust and science. One guy cracks a Mountain Dew, says it tastes wrong, pours it out, and a baby mouse floats up like the world's worst prize. He sues. The company brings in a pathologist who calmly explains that if a mouse had been in a sealed, acidic soda environment for as long as the timeline suggests, you would not be seeing a mouse. You'd be closer to a jelly with a tail. And then someone on the internet actually does the grim little experiment, and after a month, jelly with a tail. Science is powerful and sometimes deeply unappetizing. Another case, a man opens a diet soda and gets strings of pink, an inky sludge, and something heavy lodged inside the can. The FDA takes it. The analysis says frog or possibly toad, with internal organs conspicuously absent. They inspect the plant. They don't find any process failures. It doesn't answer the how, but it does something companies love. It fails to prove the where. Cases like this drift into a fog where no one admits anything and everyone just quietly drinks water for a month. Back to the chili. The examiner's science doesn't accuse anyone. It just quietly refuses to support the simplest version of events. And when that happens, when the body of evidence doesn't match the story, you start looking at the storytellers. Anna keeps telling her story, but law enforcement starts asking different questions. Witnesses are interviewed, and we hit a run of little frictions, the kind that don't mean everything by themselves, but together start to feel like a sweater unraveling. People at the table remember her making a scene. Sure, but nobody actually remembers seeing the finger in her mouth. One person remembers vomit. The site doesn't. Employees who are on duty take voice stress tests. They all pass. I'm not here to argue for the accuracy of those tests. I'm just saying nothing points inward at the kitchen. It all points outward, into the air around the story. Then there's Anna's history. It turns out she's been in a lot of legal rooms before, a string of civil actions across different states, some settled before they ever reach trial. It's not a crime to use the system. It's just interesting in context. It paints a shape. Companies notice shapes. And then, in what had to be one of the stranger PR days in Bay Area fast food history, Wendy's does a free Frosty promo to celebrate her arrest. Not because they found out whose finger it was, that answer is still moving underground, but because the investigation is now looking just as hard at the claimant as at the chili. It's not subtle and it's not kind, but it's definitely a signal. We think we're the ones being eaten alive here. Here's where the story hops the curb into the kind of detail you don't see coming. Investigators eventually identify the finger, as belonging to a man named Brian, who, months earlier in Las Vegas, had the tip of his finger severed in a workplace accident. Industrial machinery. It happens in a split second and leaves you with a reality you didn't plan for. He can't work for a while. Money gets tight. Life gets smaller. Around the same time, he owes a coworker $50. The coworker is connected to Anna. The debt gets resolved, let's call it, using something other than cash. The severed fingertip changes hands. If you're wondering how that conversation even starts, Same. I don't have a category for bizarre, non-cash collateral, but apparently the world does. He thinks it's dark humor weird, like a trophy you keep in a drawer and show at parties where no one eats. He has no idea it's going to be used for theater. And that's how a piece of a person ends up far from where it started, months after it was lost, in the hands of someone who will carry it into a restaurant and say, "Look what I found in my food." Once you know that, the rest of the puzzle rearranges itself with that almost satisfying click you hate to feel in a story like this. The forensic inconsistency? Makes sense. This thing didn't spend the afternoon simmering with ground beef. It made a much shorter, colder trip. The lack of kitchen evidence, of course. It never took the kitchen route. The panicked diner, the public outrage, the million-a-day hemorrhage. Suddenly they're not the aftermath of an accident. They're the goal of a plan. And listen, I understand why people want the corporate monster to be the villain in stories like this. It's simpler. It feels earned. We've all had a bag of something that looked a little off and thought, are they even watching this line? But there's a different kind of monster, too, the one in the temptation to manufacture harm and sell it as trauma. That monster is quieter. It shakes fewer vending machines, but it eats just as much. In the end, charges get filed. Conspiracy to file a false claim, attempted grand theft, restitution for the wages restaurant workers lost while customers stayed away. There are bans. There are sentences. The fingertip goes from evidence back to being, heartbreakingly, just a piece of a person someone once was,